Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome back. In today's episode, we talked to Teri Leigh, who is a mindfulness and mindset coach. As a wisdom weaver, she has taught over 200,000 students and worked with over 2,000 private clients. Teri introduces us to the powerful MOZI Method, which focuses on the body, mind, and spirit. This method helps you, women in the corporate world, advance in your career by activating your nervous system and radiating a powerful feeling from within. Teri shares stories, real life actually, stories of clients who have used the MOZI Method to transform their confidence and achieve their goals. So tune in to discover how you can use the MOZI Method in your career. Teri, thank you so much for being here. Teri, one of the things that I'm working right now is to empower women with making sure that they have powerful phrasing. And I know you're doing some similar work, and you have a MOZI method of exercises that you deliver to your clients. Can you tell me a little bit about what that method is and how women in the corporate world can actually use it to continue to advance in their careers?
Yes, the MOZI method is a series of 30-second exercises, and 30 seconds is conservative. It can actually be 10 seconds that you can do before you're going into a meeting, while you're on a phone call, while you're writing an email response to something, or even while you're in a meeting, to activate your nervous system and get you into a powerful feeling inside yourself so that you can really have that feeling from the inside and radiate it outwards. So it's a nervous system exercise, and it's 3 parts. So the 3 parts are body, mind, and spirit. The body is a specific physical body action or a posture that you take, very similar to what Amy Cuddy teaches in her practice of body language, but it's even more fine-tuned than that, because it's not just about gross body function or body posture, but it's about specific fine-tuned body actions that match the mind, which is a very, like you said, powerful phrasing. So coming up with a very specific mindful intention that's very short, 3 to 5 words, and choosing those words very carefully and precisely. So the sounds of the letters, the tone of the word, the power of the message really hits your nervous system and matches what you're doing with your body. And then the spirit part of it is that you add a very specific breath work, because breath changes everything in your moods and hormones. So if you change your moods and hormones with breath, and then you add to that change with a very specific intention of that affirmation being that powerfully phrased affirmation, and you link that affirmation to a very precise body action that matches what you're trying to say, you're having a global and holistic effect, both on your own nervous system and the energy and the way you're radiating yourself to those that you're engaged with.
Got it. So give me an example of how one of your clients can use the MOZI method.
I'll give you an example of a really powerful client that had a really amazing response. She came to me saying, this is a Gen Xer, so our age type woman. She came to me saying, I have spent my entire life, my entire adult career life as a strong, independent woman. I'm a single mother. I raised 2 amazing children I'm now an empty nester. And I worked my way up the corporate ladder, scratching and fighting all the way to become a CFO of 2 corporations. and I'm tired.
Mm.
I'm exhausted from all the work and all the fighting and all the masculine, powerful energy of having to scratch and bite to get there. I want to now, as I'm reaching my elder stage of life, I want to embrace the feminine, but I don't want to lose the power. And I suggested to her, you are using your affirmation worked for you. You were a strong, independent woman. It made you very strong and it made you very independent. And she was also asking about relationship and wanting to have more emotional, sensual connections in relationship. And I said, let's change that affirmation, the linguistics of it, the phrasing of it, to have a similar meaning, but a different energy to it. So instead of saying strong, independent woman, I suggested she say, I am a phenomenal woman. And I even suggested she read that poem by Maya Angelou to herself out loud every day. And that sounding, that phrasing, phenomenal woman, the F, M, and N sounds of phenomenal mirror the energy of the word feminine.
Oh.
So instead of strong independence, which is a very masculine sound, she was using phenomenal, and it totally changed her energy on the inside. Now, that's just the mental intention of it. So that's one part of the 3-part MOZI method.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her, then as you're saying to yourself, I'm a phenomenal woman, move your body, specifically your hips, because that's where women, your hips and your breasts, and really feeling the voluptuous curves of your body. Move your body like a feminine woman, like a woman in your hips. So she was literally like hula hooping her hips as she was saying, I am a phenomenal woman. And then I said, match your breath as a soft, smooth, feminine breath. So instead of a harsh breathing, I was having her smooth out her breathing to match the intention. So she did this. She did this for 2 weeks, and she still does this to this day. But for the first 2 weeks, she was very intentional. She read the poem to herself every morning while doing the breathing and the feminine action with her hips. And then throughout the day, several times a day, every time she went to the bathroom, every time she took a break from whatever she was doing, she'd do it for 10 to 20 seconds, probably about 15 to 20 times a day. And by the middle of that 2 weeks, between the sessions that I talked to her, she came back to me the next session after 2 weeks and she said, a week ago, I did something I've never done. And it's not something I had in my mind to go do. I found myself walking into a department store and buying a flowy, feathery dress. I've always worn suits and business attire. And I found myself buying a very flowing dress. And I wore it to work the next day. And I was confident wearing it in a way that I never would have been in the past. I felt the phenomenal woman coming out of me. And she said, people changed how they responded to me. It was a totally different energy. People were looking at me in different ways. They were talking to me in different ways. And they listened to me more clearly in ways they hadn't before.
Oh, wow.
And so that's an example of the MOZI method really working and how it can work really powerfully when it's personally catered.
I really like the fact that it's the 3-part, the mental, the moving your body, and then the soft breath, because a lot of times for meditation, they're like, do the breathing. It's like this, this whole thing with the breathing. To me, it's always been very difficult to do that whole breathing with meditation. So I like that you kind of change it a little bit to a softer breath so that it's not so harsh, breathing. But I like the fact that you highlighted the MOZI method with your client. And obviously, I think you work primarily with or mostly with Gen X women. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I do have often, I get some, I don't know that want to label a particular generation, but I get women going through like a quarter life crisis. And then I get women going through a midlife crisis. I tend to work with women as they're going through these, and I don't like the word crisis either, but as they're going through major life transitions.
Right.
And that's what this client was dealing with is, hey, my kids, I'm empty nest. I've reached the height of my career. I want to start doing gentler things. And what she's doing now, she's still the CFO of these two organizations, but she's running a nonprofit now. And she's going to Africa, and she's this mother energy for this nonprofit that's serving the world in a whole different way.
That's awesome. So I like where the conversation is going with us today, because the MOZI method could be something that our listeners can apply to something that I'm working on. So in the fall, I'm going to deliver a mastermind course, and it's going to be around creating your corporate roadmap. It's like a personal business plan. And part of that is going to be crafting your script to negotiate. Because a lot of times we tell women you need to negotiate, and actually 20% of women never negotiate. So I'm making sure that the participants of this program understand that preparing and crafting your script is going to be really important. So I'm kind of giving them like power phrases and things kind of like, moving your body with like the Amy Cuddy method as well. But I love the fact that with the MOZI method, they can take these power phrases and apply the body movement as well as the breath and make it really powerful, because I cater to women that are trying to advance in their corporate careers, not necessarily executives that are already CFOs, but everything that we're talking about applies to any individual that wants to make a change or some kind of transition in their life, whether they're changing jobs or changing careers or whatever the situation. Do you think the MOZI method would be a good complement to these business power phrases that I'm working on?
Definitely, because what the MOZI method does is it works internally with your nervous system. And if you choose just one or two very powerful, potent, precise and concise words that really hold that message, and then you repeat those words with the body action and a specific breath that matches that action many, many times a day, you're training your nervous system into a new way of being.
Got it.
And so it's not just about, let's do this one time. It's about making you transition into this new way of living your life and making your nerves feel like, and your hormones really adjust to those changes that you want to incorporate into your world.
And it's incredible what the brain does, right? I know you do a lot of, or you dabble or do some neuroscience. And so the brain is so powerful. So if you start telling yourself, kind of like, I am a phenomenal woman, your body and your mind are going to start responding. And so I don't even know what comes first. Is it the thought and then the reaction, or is it the words and then the mind follows? Like what happens there in your opinion?
It's a chicken or egg conversation.
Okay.
It's really a triad. You can start with any one of them, body, mind, or spirit. What happens if you only do one, you're losing 2/3 of the power of the intention and the action. So if you just do the breath work, you're going to change your moods and your emotions in that moment. But if you're not linking a specific thought to that breath work, it's more global and general than it is. If you link that specific thought, you get that very focused and clear message that you're running through your nerves all the time. If you don't add the body to it, it can get stuck up here where it's just about thinking and it doesn't really become action in your life. And you just think it's going to happen, but you're actually not physically doing the things to make it happen. So you have to have all three to have the most powerful impact and change in your system. I'm not saying it's not going to work if you only do one or two of them, but all three, body, mind, and breath, will have the most powerful, long-lasting, and fastest impact, especially if you're doing them many, many, many times a day, because that's what neuroscience is. The brain works on repetition.
Right.
And so it has to be short. It has to be simple. And if it's short and simple and the triad that you're doing many times a day, that's the retraining and rewiring of your brain and your nerves.
Okay, I see. So for example, our listeners can use or select, and is it just like one or two specific power phrases that you would create with them to make sure that it's all okay? So then they would be doing your part, like the MOZI method, prior to going in to talking to a manager about, opportunities or any kind of request that they want. So mine is more of giving them the actual verbiage of what to say when they're in the meeting. But this is an excellent compliment, because when they're preparing themselves neurologically, when they're preparing their brain, their body, and their spirit all at the same time, then everything that I'm telling them to do is even more powerful. So,
and another piece to that, yes, they do it prior to going into the meeting, but in many cases, they can keep doing the body action and the thought and the breath while they're in the meeting, as they're in it. So every time they're listening to someone, they can be holding the body action and doing the breathing and just repeating in their own minds those same words. Or as they're, like you're saying, they're going to be using those power phrases while they're talking in the meeting. So if they're also doing the body action, and these body actions can be very subtle and internal. They don't have to be like I suggested, the one flowing her hips. It can be as simple as engaging a certain muscle to a certain degree, like engaging your core muscles for yourself on the inside.
Got it. Now, you talked about your client that she's already in a CFO position and she's still working, but she's trying to, kind of what popped up for me is to have a little bit more fulfilling life overall. And so what are some other things that you normally do with your clients when they're going through a rough transition? And it might not be an executive, but they're trying to accomplish something in their life, again, for us, it's career development, but it could be something else. Aside from the MOZI method, what are some other things or techniques that you use with women to summon that confidence? And, because a lot of times women hold themselves back, and confidence is a huge thing for women, and also fear. You're afraid of either getting in trouble, or you're afraid of not being good enough, or the imposter syndrome. So what are some other methods that you use with your clients when you experience somebody that's in upheaval?
I would say that it's not really about other methods. It's about learning the base 7 exercises of the MOZI method.
Okay.
Because each of the 7 base exercises, which are the very basic ones, they work with a different part of our nervous system. We have 7 nerve centers along our spine. And each one of those nerve centers, sort of a ball and bundle and intersection of nerves, represent a different aspect of our soul and our being and our body. So, for example, you mentioned anxiety, you mentioned worry. That nerve center bundle lives in the base of your spine, right at your tailbone. And when we feel worried, we get agitated and we get restless leg, and we feel like we have to do something. Yeah. So the base MOZI method exercise for that energy is to ground and get stable by being still in your feet. And that makes you feel safe, and it relieves that anxiety. You might still have the stuff going on in your world, but you'll get that feeling of, even though all this stuff is going on, I have the ability to manage it. I've been through worse. I've been through I can apply those skills to this. That MOZI method exercise that focuses on that part of your body will help you get there. You also mentioned confidence. Confidence lives in the 3rd energy center, whereas anxiety is the 1st energy center. Confidence lives in the 3rd energy center, which is your digestive organs, and your core, which is where we feel strength, and where our true strength of our body comes from is the core. So by learning how to engage the muscles of your core and how to work with your core, as well as a very clear and precise affirmation around confidence and strength and phenomenal ability, then adding breath to that, and so forth. So there are 7 base exercises. So everything I do with my clients, I start them with the 7 base exercises. And then we can branch off into finding more fine-tuned, precise ones for the more specific and focused issues they're dealing with in their lives. But usually what happens is, once we get through all 7 base ones, all those other issues start to resolve themselves. because within each of those 7 base MOZI method exercises is the coding to change your nervous system to address those smaller issues.
Do you feel that you're spinning your wheels and advancing your career slower than you'd like? Well, I got you, because I have a free quiz to help you figure out how you may sabotage your career advancement. Our free quiz is designed to help you identify the common pitfalls preventing you from reaching your career goals. The quiz is 100% free, and it only takes 3 minutes to complete. Take the quiz now to start taking control of your career today. The link is on the episode website. And now let's head back to today's conversation. It sounds like magic, Teri.
Thank you.
But it makes sense, because when you start understanding how your nervous system works, then, if you're going into the office and you're frazzled because you have so much to do, and you can regulate yourself, before you start. Now, granted, you still have to organize and prioritize and all that other stuff, but it doesn't help when you start your day with anxiety and, 10 million things to do. But it's nice for me to know or to learn that there's a way for you to regulate other than just breathing, because everybody's like, just breathe. Breathing is fine. Breathing is good. We all need to breathe, right? But to know that there's a method that is applicable to a variety of situations and you can regulate yourself, that is absolutely amazing. Is there another example that you can, relate to us that this method worked on?
Yes. And this example is not so much corporate. This is more personal. And it speaks to having to be very precise in how you choose your power words. This particular client came to me with childhood background of being told she's ugly and she's stupid. And so she had this genetic coding, both from genetics, like her whole family just decided they were ugly way, way back, and stupid. She was also special needs with learning disabilities all through school. So she had that childhood upbringing of this coding and conditioning of I'm ugly and I'm stupid. And so she had been working with the affirmation of I'm smart and I'm beautiful, which is the opposite of ugly and dumb, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
However, because those words are diametrically opposed on the spectrum, she was actually activating stupid and ugly by saying beautiful and smart because she didn't believe it.
Oh.
And because they're on the same spectrum. Make sense?
Yes.
Because we relate the dualistic as
Mm-hmm.
being part of a whole. So I backed her out and I gave her, okay, let's walk her through the MOZI Method series of all 7 exercises and made her feel safe and stable and not so anxious and worried, and then up to the confidence and so forth. But then when we got to a more precise phrasing of her affirmation for herself, we jumped out of that concept altogether and we said, what are your strengths? What are your assets as a human soul that has something to provide to the world as a whole? And it came out the word precious, that she's very precious, that she's very gentle, that she's very sweet, and she's very loving, and she's very kind. And so the word precious with the P, the soft P, and the sh, which is what she does for people, is she gives them that energy. And so when she started saying, I'm precious, again, with a softer breath than like a 4-point box breath that's stopping and holding, but a very soft, slow flowing ocean breath. And with an intention of her body being strong and soft, she then started to feel not necessarily smart and not necessarily beautiful, but she felt like she was valuable because she had something special to offer. And so it really becomes about fine tuning. What is that language? And part of it is the sound of the words and how that's the sound of those letters match with the energy you're trying to evoke in your system. And part of it is going back into your own history and what do you really need to evoke for yourself as you're going through this major transition of your life. And really that's what it is when you hit a major transition in your life, whether it be empty nest or leaving the nest or moving your home or divorcing your ex, that's always a major shakeup of your nerves. And your nerves are like, wait, what I was doing doesn't work anymore. Your nerves have to find a new way to be. And so that's what the MOZI method offers, is a new way to be, and then a way to make that the neuroscience brain training regular habit of your new life.
Gosh, I love everything that you just said. And I wrote down a couple of things, and it sounds like the MOZI method is very personal, because you said, what are your human assets? So you talk to the individuals, like you said, you kind of go all the way back to their history. And I love that you deal with that, because years ago, I did this intensive, almost like therapy. It was, 3 or 4 days. It was landmark education. And kind of, are you familiar with landmark?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you done it?
I went through a yoga teacher's version of it.
Okay, got it.
So a yoga teacher went through it and then taught it in yoga programs.
Yeah. So it kind of does just that. It kind of goes way back to kind of like your childhood traumas, and it dispels a lot of that in a very short and fast time frame. But you do have to understand what your the other thing I wrote down is that how valuable you are, and how you can portray that. And the reason why that kind of resonated with me is because that works perfectly in line with you being in the corporate world, trying to determine your value, to go and talk to your manager and say, hey, I am contributing in X, Y, or Z. But if you don't believe it, if you don't know that you're doing that, it's going to be kind of like you said, ugly and pretty, and it's going to be opposite. And you're not going to be able to walk in and deliver a very powerful position for yourself. Would you agree?
Right, exactly. If you don't believe it, it's not going to emanate from you. And if it's just words like you're speaking, kind of like that SNL skit of, is it Smalley, the guy who looks in the mirror and says, gosh darn it, people like me. And you can tell he doesn't believe it.
Yes.
That's where it gets stuck in the head rather than actually embodying it.
Yes. Speaking of which, we talked just a little while ago about Ted Lasso. Tell me a little bit about Ted Lasso. I love Ted Lasso. The reason why I love it is because, other than being funny, they talk about mental health, and they bring in a therapist or psychologist or whatever, and all the soccer players are going in there, the football players are going in there talking to Sharon, and then Ted is very hesitant to go talk to her, but when he finally talks to her, he can't stop talking to her. But tell me a little bit about why you think the Ted Lasso show is important.
I think that we, as a human culture, have been dancing around the idea of these MOZI method exercises, and we do them without even knowing it. So when we do them consciously, they have much more power. And there's a scene in Ted Lasso where Rebecca, the owner of the football team, is about to go into a meeting with owners of all the other football teams in the organization. Yes. And she's the only woman, and her ex-husband's in there.
Yes.
And she's amongst all these stodgy old white men who are powerful and stronger than her as they've portrayed themselves. So she's dealing with the patriarchy.
Yes.
And prior to going into that meeting, she does a MOZI method exercise. She doesn't call it that because she hasn't met me and it's a character on a TV show. But the MOZI method exercise she does is she goes to a mirror and she closes herself up and she goes inside herself and starts a breath, a very powerful breath. And then she opens herself way up and she sticks out her tongue and she,
oh yes.
And she holds herself in this powerful place of, I got this and I know what I'm doing. And you can see that when she walks into that meeting, she holds her core in the same way she was holding her core as she had her hands up and her tongue sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
And she maintains that energy. And the whole time they're talking, she's just sitting there with her core strong and she's breathing and taking in their information, all the things they're saying. And then at one point in the meeting, they ask her, what do you think? And it's like she takes a split-second moment to go back to that, what it felt like to be in this position. And she starts speaking, and she speaks so clearly, and she speaks so powerfully, and she speaks so honestly. and they receive her. At the end, the big guy who was leading the meeting had a big temper tantrum fit, and all the other old stodgy guys are like, wow, she did that.
Yes.
And that's how the MOZI method works. It starts with changing our own nervous system and holding that power inside and within ourselves so that we really believe it. But then as we hold it, it almost becomes contagious. And it becomes the people around us see it, and then they feel it, and then they want to be like that. And then it's almost like an energetic wave that extends through the aura system.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in that scene.
I love it. I love that. And I think in that scene, the guy that was trying to get everybody to invest, like threw a big temper tantrum, and then they all had like food all over themselves and stuff. So I just love that show again. And not only is it funny, but it gives you some really good lessons about being able to take care of yourself. And as a woman, being able to step into that confidence. And I love that you describe how Rebecca basically did the MOZI method. And by the way, does the MOZI, M-O-Z-I, does it stand for anything?
A real short story is I needed a name for my system. So I went to a park in the woods and I sat with a tree and I said, I'm not leaving this tree until I know the name of my system. And out of the woods, it happened to be a dog park. Out of the woods bounded this Great Dane. And this huge, like his head was this big, came right up to me and he touched his nose to my cheek. Wow. He didn't lick me. He didn't pummel me. He just touched his nose to my cheek. And then his owners came out of the woods and they called him, and his name was MOZI.
Oh my gosh. I absolutely love that.
Well, and I thought it's perfect because he embodied the energy I want to teach, is that confidence and that playfulness, and that he was contagious to me.
Amazing.
So MOZI.
So Teri, how did you get to where you are today? Tell me just a little bit about your background and how you ended up being a mindfulness and mindset coach, because I think everything that you talked about is amazing. It should be out in the world because, again, we can all regulate ourselves. But how did you get to where you are today as a mindfulness coach?
I started my career as a high school English teacher for the hardest students to teach, the really rough and tough. I had more interactions with parole officers than I did kids and parents. So I have a master's degree in teaching. So understanding how to teach those who are most resistant to learning, really, and really learning, like Ted Lasso did, that it's not about the sport. It's not about English. It's about helping human souls become better human beings.
Yeah.
And better versions of themselves. So after 10 years of that, I got bit by the yoga bug, and I opened a yoga studio. I spent 2 years owning my own yoga studio. And then I traveled nationwide around America, teaching yoga teachers how to teach yoga in the nervous system and the chakra system. I also really got deep into anatomy and physiology and understanding how the physical body works. So it's like I started in the mind with teaching, and then I moved into the body with yoga teaching. And then I got really interested in shamanism, which is the natural elements, earth, water, fire, and how they interact. And what I discovered with that is most activated in the body through your breath. And that brought in the yoga as well, because yoga is such a breathing practice. But I've learned that different breathing practices could activate different elements of earth, water, fire within your nervous system. And that got me curious about neuroscience. So then I started studying, just as a layman, reading books and taking a few classes here and there in NLP and other things like that. And all of that came together in the MOZI method. And what really got me intrigued about the MOZI method was when I was teaching yoga, I realized even for the yogis, the teachings weren't accessible. Like most people don't have 30 minutes to 60 minutes, or if they're going to a class, it can be 3 hours to get ready for the class, go to the class, come home and clean up from the class. Most people don't have that kind of time or discipline in their lives. Most people don't have the time or discipline to sit in silent breathing meditation for 20 minutes. That practice only reaches a very small percentage of the population. So I wanted to create something to reach a vast wider population, just like I was reaching those tough kids when I taught high school. And so the idea of the MOZI method, in that it had to be short, it had to be easy, and it had to reinforce over time, which is the basis of teaching. And so that's where I am today. I've been teaching the MOZI method for 10 years.
That is so beautiful. I love how you just started as a teacher in the mind, and then you went to yoga, which is the breath in the body, and then you went to the neuroscience, or the yoga is more the spirit, and then the neuroscience. But I love how it actually all flowed through your life, and you've had so much time of learning in each of those facets. So that's pretty incredible how you were able to put it all together. I think this is absolutely amazing, Teri. So how can a listener access the MOZI method?
So terileigh.com, that's my website, TeriLeigh.com, is the great easiest way to access me. And if you do a /free-gift, that free gift is a PDF that offers 7 base MOZI method exercises that you can try in your everyday life. And there are things you can do all day, any day, to just see what happens if you try them. And of course, I'm a coach. I also do my own group programs. I do a group program starting January through September every year, where I take people through those 7 base MOZI method exercises in a mastermind community group aspect with only 15 people in the group. So they become really close friends by the end of that 9 months.
Gosh.
So all that's available on my website, terileigh.com.
Amazing. That's awesome. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, Teri. I'm so excited that we had this because, again, this is anybody can use the MOZI method, but for today's purposes, I'm interested in the women in the corporate world that can take this method and really apply it to their personal lives as well as their corporate lives to continue to advance in their corporate career. So is there maybe one tip that you can leave us with that is an actionable tip from our conversation?
Yes. When you are getting ready for one of those tough conversations, whether it's a negotiation meeting or it's, that it's a meeting that's going to trip your nervous system in some way, I suggest you do three body steps with 1 mental intention and 1 breath. And those 3 body steps are: plant your feet. So you keep your feet very, very still. Engage your core softly. So not like a sucking in of your gut. I describe it to women like you're wearing an evening gown. Give it that elegance.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're feeling safe in your feet and you're feeling confident in your core. And then drop your chin just a little bit. That dropping of your chin changes your expression, and it changes your tone of voice as well. So when you change all of those 3 and you say your power phrase, and you got to come up with that, I can't make it for you.
Right.
But whatever that one word is, I am a phenomenal woman. Use that if that feels like it's resonating with you. I am a phenomenal woman. You hold all 3 of those postures and you do an even breath, just a slower, softer, evening breath before the meeting. But then you can keep those body positions while you're in the meeting. And you can keep that breath while you're in the meeting, while you're listening and not talking. It will change everything about that meeting. Let me offer one example of how I used it recently in a difficult conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with an organization where they had a money back guarantee and they didn't fulfill what they promised. And so I asked for my money back and they said no. And so I came back and I came on a meeting and I said, they asked me for a meeting. So I got on the meeting and they started recording the meeting right away. Now, in prior engagements with this organization, they had violated privacy. So I didn't want the meeting recording.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did this exact MOZI method exercise prior to the meeting, and I held it during the meeting. And the first thing I got on Zoom, it said, "This meeting is being recorded." He said, "Hello." I said, "Hi, Michael. I'm not comfortable with this meeting being recorded." And I kept my posture and I kept my breath and I didn't say anything else. And he rambled and he got all flustered. He yelled at his dogs. He said, "I got to go text somebody about this." And I repeated it again. I said, "I'm not comfortable with this meeting being recorded because you have violated privacy in the past." And he rambled again and he went all crazy in his own energy. And I said it a third time. And eventually he said, we need to reschedule. And I said, yes, we do. And that was it. And he even said in all of his stuff, you're going to talk more than me. And I said, no, not if it's being recorded. And it worked because I felt grounded and centered. And he was flustered by that. He expected me to be upset. It was a really interesting shift in dynamic.
And I love that because, I mean, by the way, as you were talking, I had my feet planted and I had like my core and the breath, and I can feel the difference in energy. So I could totally feel it. So if you are preparing to go have a difficult conversation, whatever the request or the result is that you're looking, I think this is so powerful. So did you end up having a subsequent meeting with them, and did you get your money back after all?
I have not yet gotten my money back. This is probably a lawyer situation.
Got it. Yeah.
However, they have not flustered me in my moods and emotions.
And that's the key right there. That's the
yes.
key. Awesome. Well, Teri, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was a fantastic conversation. I am going to obviously make sure that this recording is out in social media, but for my groups, anybody that I talk to, I am going to be talking the MOZI method up because I think it's so important for everybody to figure out how to regulate themselves and hold their power whenever they're trying to accomplish something in their life. So thank you so much, Teri, for coming on the show today. Any final words?
I just want to thank you also for the invitation. And the final words is body, mind, breath. Just keep doing it. It'll change everything in your life for the better.
Awesome. Thank you again, Teri. So the main takeaway for me is that incorporating the MOZI method into your daily routine can enhance your confidence, regulate emotions, and improve your communication skills. Teri leaves us with one tip, which is to incorporate that MOZI method into your preparation for important meetings and negotiations. And during the meetings themselves, you can still use the MOZI method to regulate your nervous system and radiate confidence. All of Teri's contact information is going to be on the episode website. And by the way, I wanted to let everybody know that this fall, I will be launching a mastermind group where you will be able to create your very own career roadmap that's going to help you be seen and heard at work so that you can get that promotion and ultimately make more money. Spots are limited. So if you want more information, go to nowomanleftbehind.com for additional details. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.